Congratulations! Today is the day, and you're gonna forget about all of the opening pain with the black pieces. I'm gonna show you the easiest opening to implement that you can start playing today that actually works like magic. What's up, chess player? Welcome to the Journey to Grandmaster, the place where you can improve every single aspect of your chess game. Today, I'm gonna show you this magnificent opening as black, and the beauty of this is you absolutely don't care who you're gonna play against and what he's gonna do. Even if you are gonna play Magnus Carlsen tomorrow, which I sincerely wish you are, then you can use it. And the first 15 to 20 moves, I guarantee you're not gonna suffer and you're gonna be proud of your play. So nobody cares what white does, you play the move d6 on first move. Then you don't care what happens, you play knight to f6. Then, depending whether you can play e5 immediately, if you can, you just do it. If you don't, you prepare it first with the move knight to d7. Then finally play e5 because you want to fight for the center. All the most important actions are happening in the center. Then you play bishop e7 because, of course, you want to develop your pieces. Development is the most important thing in chess. You always want to develop all of your pieces as fast as possible and as active as possible. This is like the golden rule you should religiously focus, no matter which opening you play, but especially here. Then you want to castle, because it's very important to make sure that your king is safe before you're going all in into the attack. And finally, you play this tricky move c6, like it's the most important move of this entire opening, because it controls so many squares. It doesn't allow your opponent to jump anywhere, use any of the weaknesses, like you don't have any weaknesses with this move. And then you are trying to attack on the queen side with b5, a5, and so on, or you are trying to break through with d5. d5 is like the most fantastic move you can make, and sometimes you even achieve both. Now, let me show you how I used this exact setup to be the very strong chess player in a chess tournament so that you can use exactly the same in your games. I played this amazing tournament, Cranky Chess Open. I have seen Magnus Carlsen in person for the first time. So many incredible grandmasters were there. The current world chess champion Dean Liren. I mean, for me this was amazing, and I knew, well, I need to show that I'm capable of playing strong as well, so I need to play a good tournament. Now, I was playing as black, and I wanted to win the game. So I needed this special opening because I didn't just want to play symmetrically after d4 to play d5, and I don't know, it's very difficult to outplay your opponent. My opponent played knight f3, and I just started the way I always do if I want to outplay my opponent like that. I'm playing the move d6, and this is the first reason why this opening is so magical. Absolutely don't care. Does your opponent play e4, d4, knight f3, c4? Doesn't matter. You play d6, knight f6, knight d7, e5, bishop e7, castles, and c6, and then you're gonna destroy him. Let me show you how exactly you do it. He's playing d4 now, grabbing the center. Of course, e4 was also possible. I don't care. I just play knight to f6. He plays c4. Now, e5 is not possible immediately because he has two attackers. Very important to make sure you have enough defenders, because this is like your key pawn. You are not allowed to lose it. I'm playing the move knight to d7. My opponent plays knight to c3, and now there is absolutely nothing stopping me from playing the move e5. e5 is like the key move here. You want to fight for the center. Center is the most important part of the board. You always want to make sure you're fighting for it. My opponent plays g3, which is one of the possible plans. You can also play e4 and bishop e2, or g3 and put your bishop on g2. Now, I can play bishop e7 immediately, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it, but I just started with the move c6 to get some additional opportunities. Because if my opponent just continues his plan and plays bishop to g2, I can actually already go forward with my e-pawn and play the move e4. And now, it's not what you expect to get as the white player from the very beginning. Well, you need to defend, you need to figure out a square for this knight. Yes, you can go to g5 and seems like you are very active and you're attacking, but I just play d5. I have this amazing, absolutely incredible pawn chain, and then I'm ready to play h6 and kick your knight away. I mean, of course, it's playable for white, but it's like not what you are expecting to get. And the second reason why this opening is so amazing for black is because it's not a mainstream opening. It's not like your opponent is preparing day and night for it. It's not like he has a lot of experience with it. So if you understand the ideas very good, and I'm gonna show it to you, and your opponent doesn't, obviously, he doesn't have enough experience playing it, then you already have a huge advantage. Apparently, my opponent didn't want to allow me to grab the control of the center, so he played e4 himself. This is, of course, also possible, but like I said, I don't care at all. I just continue my plan. I play bishop to e7, bishop goes to g2, castles, and castles. So the first part of the opening is over. We have done exactly what we are about to. And now you remember I mentioned we want to attack on the queen side because we want to get our counterplay. It doesn't matter which opening you're playing, always needs to get some counterplay. Otherwise, you're playing too passive, and sooner or later, your opponent is gonna come after you and he's gonna destroy you. Don't want to allow that. So I'm playing the move a6 and I'm starting this plan. By the way, I have made a complete course 10-day opening mastery where you can learn exactly all of the plans you ever need to play this opening, as well as so many others, because this course is unique one. Like, you're not gonna find it anywhere else. It allows you to build a complete and holistic lifetime opening repertoire in just 10 days at the price of a single opening course. This is an amazing offer, which by the way expires soon, so make sure to take advantage of that. You learn not only like the variations, because you see the beauty of this opening is that you don't need to learn that many like concrete 30 moves variations like you need to do in the Sicilian defense. Instead, we are focusing on the plans. Of course, I show you some tricks that you can use to win immediately if your opponent is making a mistake, or some tricks he might use, so you are well prepared. But the main focus is about the practical application, so you can immediately use this opening as well as all of the other we are covering in the course in your games, and so that you're prepared against whatever your opponent might come. So if you're interested, just use the link in the description. Take a look at the free tutorials. It's completely free, like no registration needed, nothing, just go to the website. Take a look at the free tutorial of how you can just outplay your opponent as white with a fantastic opening I'm recommending, and see whether it's something for you. Then you might take a look at the reviews to see what other people are saying about the course, or you can take a look at the review from the respected YouTube channel Also Chess, who has done a great job just explaining of how much you can get out of this single course in just 10 days. So my opponent wants to stop my counterplay, because if he doesn't, I just play b5, and I have so much initiative here, and he still doesn't really have anything in the center because I have everything under control. This is the beauty. Like, there is a pawn on e5, you cannot do anything about it. You can just exchange it. I'm gonna take it back. It doesn't give you anything. In fact, every time white takes on e5 in this opening, they don't have any opening advantage at all. So very, very important. You are solid in the center. Just attack on the queen side. This is our main plan. And my opponent tried to stop it. He played the move a4 because now b5 is obviously impossible. And here is a very important trick to remember. I've just played a6, and now I'm playing a5. This seems incredibly counterintuitive, but if you know it, you're gonna just do it. The reason is very simple. Now we control the b4 square. This pawn can never go to b4, it doesn't make any sense for white. And we want, at some point, we always take on d4 because we want to get more space for our pieces. And then our knight has a perfect square to go, the c5 one. There, the knight is attacking the e4 pawn, puts pressure on a4, and the most important thing is to make sure this knight cannot be kicked away. And that is possible with the move b4. But now that we have played a5, we are controlling that, so we are good to go. Very important. You play a6, and either you play b5 next move and have a tremendous counterplay on the queen side, or your opponent plays a4 to stop it, then you just play a5, and you're ready for e takes d and knight c5. Let's see what happened here. My opponent plays h3. The idea is to cover the g4 square so that he can play bishop e3, not being scared of knight to g4. I don't care. I just continue my development. This is the beauty. You absolutely don't care what happens. It's just magic, because first of all, it's not a mainstream opening, so your opponent doesn't know what to do, and if he's not like a professional chess player, then he might as well just lose all of his time. He still doesn't know what to do. This is perfect for us. Secondly, you know what to do because it's simple to remember. You don't need to learn some long, super weird, super difficult variations. You just need to remember which piece goes where, and basically you don't care what happens. You can execute your plan. And thirdly, you can play it against absolutely everything. You just don't care whether your opponent plays e4 and that's going to be the fielder defense after d6. Or he plays d4. You still are going to play d6, the old Indian defense. I mean, this is so perfect. And I have had so many years of tournament experience in it. Even the strong guys, they just don't know what to do against it. Let's see what happened in this game. My opponent plays bishop to e3 because I would say the most important thing about any opening is not the opening itself, it's the understanding what you're gonna do after the opening. And this is why this one is so perfect. You can just learn it in a few days, the ideas that you must know, and then you're good to go, no matter what happens. Rook goes to e8, queen goes to c2. Of course, both sides are trying to develop all of the pieces. Remember the golden principle of the chess opening. Now it's time for me. I need to get some more space because I cannot develop my bishop, doesn't go anywhere, and my knight, it really has to be on c5. This is the main idea of the entire opening. So I'm taking on d4 to make it possible. Knight takes, and my knight goes to c5. Now you see how important it is to have that pawn on a5, otherwise my opponent would just play b4 and kick me away. My opponent plays rook a to e1. Here is where the problems begin for him. Seems like a logical move. I mean, he has more space on the king side, he has more pieces there, so he just wants to launch an attack. He wants to play f4, like g4, g5, and give me a checkmate. The problem with that is it just doesn't work, and this is a very good opportunity, another advantage of this opening, because it's not the one where your opponent, even if he's not that strong as you are, he can just play normally, like d4, d5, e4, e5, and so on, and just develop his pieces and be okay with draw. No, here you have a very unusual situation where your opponent is forced to do something. He feels like, well, I'm more active, I might as well use it somehow if I'm smart, so I need to go on and I need to attack. The problem is, though, the attack doesn't work, and he creates a lot of weaknesses in his camp, which you're gonna perfectly use later on to just destroy him. This is exactly what I did in this game with the help of an absolutely brilliant move, which I want to show you so that you can do it in your games. So I played the move bishop to f8. This is a very useful one because I open up my rook, I put additional pressure on the e4 pawn. My opponent plays g4. He is like, well, I have developed all of my pieces, it's time for me to go for an attack. The problem is, though, for him, that I don't care. Like, I'm okay with him playing to g5 because I know the right plan. It's all about knowing the right plan after the opening. I know that this knight should be on c5 because c5 is the best square for the knight to be. Now, I need another square for this guy. Well, another perfect square you can go to is b4, because if the two knights are there, then they control the d3 square. They obviously attack the queen, and it's very annoying for the opponent. So this is exactly what I decided to do. I played the move knight to a6. Yes, I could have started with knight f to d7, but it was kind of a provocation for my opponent because he already played g4, so I assumed there is a high chance he wants to play g5. And if I want to play knight d7 and knight c5 anyway, I might as well provoke him to do that, so I basically win a tempo here, because g5 is not like a useful move for white. It opens up this bishop, it makes h3 pawn more vulnerable, which plays like the major role later on in the game. So I'm continuing my plan, knight f to d7. My opponent plays f4, yeah, trying to be active, trying to say, well, I'm gonna just checkmate you in a minute, but that's not possible at all. So I need to create my counterplay. Back to the main topic, in chess you always need some counterplay. You always need some ideas, some dream to achieve. And of course, if your opponent attacks you on the side, the golden principle suggests you need to answer in the center. Because you see that this king is getting naked. My opponent is going forward with the pawns, but the center is going to be exploded. This is tremendously dangerous. I'm going to just destroy his king. So I need to open up the center. That is the plan. How can I do it? Well, with the help of the move d5. This is like the main idea of the entire opening. If you can play d5 and you can get away with it, it's like a dream, because then either you are just solving all of your problems and equalize the position, or if your opponent is too aggressive on the side, then you're just gonna outplay him, and this is exactly what happened in the game. Now, once you know what to do, it's much simpler for you to find the right moves, because you need to play d5, but how to make it possible? Right now, my opponent has like 27 attackers, and I have just 2 defenders. It's not feasible for me. So I need to add more. And of course, at the same time, I need to finish my development, because development is the key to success in chess. If I'm playing the move b6, I want to continue the development. I want to add more defenders for the d5 square. And b6 allows me to create a lot of different opportunities. I can just play bishop to b7, and then prepare the move d5, I have 1 defender more, or what I really wanted to do, to play bishop a6, and then put pressure on this c4 pawn and pin it, so that when I play d5, it just simply cannot take me. So this is even more active. My opponent played rook to d1, and here you can already feel a first sign of panic, because normally, when you're playing as white and you want to attack, you never play like rook a to e1 and then suddenly rook to d1 back. It's not logical, like from any perspective, right? I already felt like there is something going on here. My opponent is not that confident. And probably he played that to control the d3 square, because once my knight is coming to c5, knight d3 might be very annoying, so he wanted to make sure that that is covered. The problem with that is he's wasting time. And time is the most precious resource in chess. Well, similar to life as well. So I am playing here bishop to a6. I'm just doing my job and see what happens, because d5 becomes more and more feasible with every move. You see that there is a rook here on the same file with the queen. That is always very dangerous for the queen. There is a bishop on e3 that without the pawn on f2 is much more vulnerable. So I'm closer and closer to my goal. But before that, I need to finish my development. Development is always the key. So I'm playing rook to a to d8. This rook is the last piece which is doing completely nothing in the game yet. So now I'm activating, and of course it's going to play a very important part supporting the pawn on d6 with the idea to make d5 possible. So once again, when you know the plan, it's much simpler for you to find the right moves. Queen to f2, my opponent goes away from this e-file where my rook is, and from this diagonal where my bishop is. But it's another tempo you spend, because this queen is making a lot of moves. Now I'm playing knight to c5, and I'm reaching like a perfect position. This is what you should be aiming for when you play this opening. It's like a fantastic thing to do. So now it was relatively simple for me to find this best move in the position, like the one I was doing everything for. I play the move d5. And even though I still don't have enough defenders for it, it's just screaming at me that I should do it. Even if I lose a pawn, I get so much activity. I can get to the white skin because he is now kind of naked, and see this attack wasn't successful at all. Like there is no threats for the king. He just created weaknesses. Yeah. So d5, like if not now, then when? Every single one of my pieces are ready for it. If I wait just one move with it, then he might just escape with his rook, play rook to g1, and there is no pin for my bishop, and then c takes d would be possible for him. I don't want to allow that. I want to use the momentum. My opponent takes on d5. Actually, he does a pretty smart thing here. I am taking it, and then he plays knight d to b5. That opens up the rook from d1, and this is a move with a tempo. But I'm playing queen to c8. This is a very, very tricky move, because it keeps an eye on the pawn on h3, and that little guy is like the most important thing in this entire game. Why? Well, because after c takes d, I am just removing this knight. I decided that he has too many pieces here, my bishop is still doing nothing, and I have a very, very concrete idea in mind. Now you have a choice. If you take with the pawn, then somehow the pawn structure is horrible, your knight is vulnerable, so there are every kind of knight d3 ideas where the rook is attacking the bishop, the queen is attacking the knight on c3. Even though the engine still can hold it, from a human perspective, you just don't want to make this move, right? So my opponent just took it on d5. And now comes the moment when I made my brilliant move. Feel free to pause the video for a second and find it. Before I reveal the answer, I want to say big thank you to the sponsor of this video, Chestnut, for providing this amazing board, Chestnut Evo, that I use for all of my analysis. I use it to play online on Chess and chess.com. I have to say, this is an amazing board. Having such a screen is a huge help for all of my analysis. You can save all of the things you are doing, all of your exercises, so you can take a look later on with the engine. This is super helpful, and I can sincerely recommend you take advantage of the amazing offer they currently have. All you need to do is to use the link in the description or the Journey to Grandmaster coupon code, get a fantastic discount. This board has changed the entire experience of learning and playing chess for me. The brilliant move is knight takes d5. I'm sacrificing my knight, I'm removing this most important pawn for white, which was, very annoying. Why? Well, because there is a very concrete tactical justification here. I'm just taking that pawn on h3 if you take on d5. I'm doing it with a check, and of course that guy on e3 is hanging. This is what makes a difference. But you should be careful. If after king to g1 you are too fast to take it, then you might get into trouble. Because suddenly your opponent plays bishop to g2, and your queen is hanging, and your rook is hanging on d8, and your rook is hanging on e3 if you just go away somewhere with the queen, so you are in total trouble. Never, ever make a move without thinking what your opponent can do. This is like the only golden rule you need to know in chess not to get into trouble. What I can do though is to take on d5 with my rook first, sacrificing yet another exchange. So right now I'm a full rook down, but of course it's just for a moment, because I take this bishop on e3 and I'm threatening rook g3 check, and there is absolutely nothing you can do against it, and black is basically destroying here white. So this is why knight takes d5 is a brilliant move here, just grabbing the central pawn, you cannot take it, and then the bishop is hanging. My opponent played the move bishop to d4. By the way, if you find the video useful so far, consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the channel, because we are about to get to 10,000 mark, and there are going to be so many giveaways, so many Q&As. I'm gonna play a tournament with you, and let's do it before 1st of May, before my birthday, to just make my dream possible and to grow our amazing community. I'm so thankful for having this opportunity to do what I love to do, to be helpful to people. I mean, this is amazing. Please, the majority of the viewers are watching without subscribing to the channel. It's not difficult for you, but it means the world to me. Thank you. Here is the moment where I made the first and only mistake in this game, like real mistake, but it's only according to the engine, because it's not simple for me, it's not obvious for me. The right move is knight to e4, and of course I have considered it, but it's like you play queen to f3, then suddenly I play bishop to b4, activating that bishop. Knight d2 fork is a threat, but you can still get rid of it by playing rook to g1, and how bishop to d2 comes. Like, to see all of that from the distance, that I'm attacking now the f4 pawn and this very beautiful construction, like, this is the perfect situation for white pieces. All of them are taking part, all of them are super active. This is what you should be aiming in every single game of yours, and especially when you play this opening. It's like an amazing one. In the beginning, your opponent thinks he's much better. Then, in the middle game, he tries to understand how he should just crush you, how he should give you a checkmate. And then later on, he realizes he's completely lost. This is how it works in this opening. This is why it works like magic. Unfortunately, I'm not a chess god. I haven't really calculated all of that. Instead, I made a human decision. I just grabbed the pawn on b3. I mean, there is a pawn hanging there. I can take it, attacking the bishop. Why on earth can't I do that? It's very dangerous for my opponent to take on b6, because, well, I'm gonna just control the entire board afterwards. I think you are not gonna survive there. My opponent played bishop e5 instead, which I think is a very interesting idea. The bishop is now very strong in the center, and I have found a very good resource, because otherwise that wouldn't be that great. By the way, bishop to c5 is not a super move for black, because he plays queen to c2 and my knight on b3 somehow is getting lost. But instead what I'm doing is playing knight to b4, even though those knights seem to be pretty weird there along the b file on the side of the board. Actually, I'm creating a lot of threats. I want to play knight d3. I want, once again, to maybe play bishop c5. I want to play knight to c5, establishing a new threat of knight d3. Once again, if my opponent decides to protect it, with bishop to e4, for example, I'm attacking the a4 pawn, and in general, all of my pieces are protected and active. My opponent decided he must use this momentum to grab the pawn on b6, but here I had a very concrete plan. I'm exchanging the rooks, and I play queen to c2. As human beings, we want to simplify the situation. The more simple it is, but we still get the advantage, the more comfortable we feel. And even though maybe objectively it's not like completely winning and not objectively the best option, I was very comfortable here because yes, it seems like my opponent is getting very active, and actually he's like one tempo away from creating a huge problem for me. Bishop to d6, and like I'm in trouble. This is a checkmate coming. But of course I have calculated that, had a very concrete idea in mind, knight to c6. Now I'm getting one of the bishops, like for sure, with the help of this fork here. Yes, you can try to pin the knight with queen to c8, but all I need to do is just give one check, queen to d1, then I'm still grabbing your bishop. I'm out of danger, and I'm gonna start my attack with knight d2 and so on. It's very scary. So instead of that, my opponent decided to take here on c6, exchange the light squares bishop, so that he still has that bishop d6 idea in mind. The problem with that, though, is that his king is completely naked now. Let me show you how I used that to my advantage. I played the move queen to c2. Like, how do you give a checkmate? It's still very, very tricky. You have just one tempo before the bishop comes to d6. He plays king to h1, which is, by the way, a blunder according to chess.com, but it's once again not obvious. Like, you need to go to g1, and then this knight comes, knight d2, knight f3 with a check. As a human being, you don't really want to allow that. This is like a free tempo for black. So my opponent plays king to h1. His desire is just to stay as far from the knight on b3 as possible, not allowing the knight to come with a check. Now, I would be happy to play knight e2, knight f3, and just say, I'm gonna checkmate you later on, you cannot do anything. But unfortunately, I'm just one tempo short. When I play knight to d2, my opponent plays bishop to d6, and that's already checkmate in one thread. Remember, chess is always a tragedy of one move. You are always like one move not enough. So that plan doesn't work for me. I decided to improve my queen's position first. One check, then queen to e2, another check, and now knight to d2 is still not fast enough, but I have another plan in mind. I'm playing knight to c5, and I'm bringing my knight back to the defense. I'm also doing it with a tempo. After knight e6, I protect the bishop on f8, and I attack the queen on d8. Queen goes to b8, and it turns out everything is protected. Yes, there are threats like f5, but I can just give a check and grab that pawn. There is another threat, which is important not to miss, something like knight c7 or knight d4. Remember, as long as this defender is gone, you're just giving me a checkmate in one. So I have to be aware of that. I calculated my variations, and I decided if I want to win, I need to grab something. So I was going for the a2 pawn. Check, into h2, and queen takes a4. Now my opponent plays king to g3, just with an idea to get rid of the checks, because, well, f5 wasn't possible, I had queen to c2 check. Knight to c7, knight d4 was not possible because I was winning. For example, after knight to c7, I have this check queen to c2, and no matter where you are going, I give you a check, either queen to d1 or queen to d3, I am winning the bishop for free, the game is over. So my opponent plays king to g3 with an idea to somehow improve the king's position. I play the move queen to e4, and remember, in the center, it's like the best position possible for the queen to be, because it controls all of the squares, the entire board. So once we are reaching the endgame, in the opening you don't want to do that, because if your queen is in the center, it's going to be constantly attacked. But in the endgame, it's the other way around. The queen in the center is the most powerful piece. My opponent plays king to f2, and now I decided just to, make a luft for my king, to make it more secure, to avoid this checkmate threat. So I'm just playing the move h6. My opponent decided to take it. I take it back. My opponent plays queen to e8. The idea is clear. He is pinning my knight, and he wants to create some threats, like knight to c7 or knight to d4 if my queen disappears, and just get rid of this knight and then take on f8. I'm giving my checks, queen to c2, goes to g3. I go queen to g6. I want to keep my queen somehow closer to the king to be more secure. And now I decided, okay, here is everything perfect. I just need to improve my position. I was thinking between a4 and h5. I guess it's a very instructive moment because if I play a4, don't really create any threats for the opponent. I still cannot play a3, he's gonna just grab it. But when I play h5, then it's a real problem for my opponent because I'm threatening to play h4, then queen to g3, win that pawn on h3, and the checkmate is coming. My opponent played knight d4. This move is finally possible. I don't have any checks, but it turns out I can just take it. Yes, he finally achieved his goal and he takes on f8. The problem is it's not a checkmate anymore like it was before with h7 and g7 pawns. Now I can just get out of it, and there is absolutely nothing he can do against the idea of knight f3 and queen g1 checkmate. The only way to stop it is queen to a8, then I just grab the bishop for free, the game is over. Now you know how to outplay your opponent as black. The question is how you should start as white to attack immediately to create pressure to make life as miserable as possible for your opponent. Well, in this video I show you just that, how I managed to get a completely crushing position out of the opening against a pretty strong opponent.